You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And you hear my take in a sentence or two when we get to one very important subject to discuss today. RTI, Right to Information Act. No more a bill. Of course, the President will assent, then we'll say an act. My guests are seated. Abdul Malik Kwekubaku, Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Clara Berry Kasati, private legal practitioner and law lecturer, GIMPA. Also here in the studio, my extreme left is Kofi Bentel, Senior Vice President of Imani Africa. He's a lawyer. And special welcome to Johnson Esiedu Nketia, General Secretary, the National Democratic Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Newsfile.
Good morning. Good morning.
Right.
Good to be here.
Okay, so the issues we have are quite a lot and will call for a lot of time to discuss. So we'll move straight to them and we begin with the EC talking about a new electoral roll, then we'll go to RTI, and then we'll talk about number 12 and matters arising. And of course, go to University of Education, Winneba, to see if we can help to end the chaotic calm at that place. But the question has been asked, and some of you have asked, where is the NPP representative? Okay. NPP government's invitation was extended to them, and here we are. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's go listen to Dr. Bosman Asare on the new voters register matter that has come up, and then we'll hear Efriye Ankra, who is Director of Elections of the NDC. So Dr. Bosman Asare is Deputy Commissioner of the Electoral Commission. Let's hear the two of them. We'll get to this back to the studio for the discussion.
2020, we are going to have a new register. So if we should resort to the offline mode of registration, which will require the purchasing of certain equipments, which we will no longer be using them in 2020, it will not be worth it. So we took a decision that we will be having an online registration. And because of the online registration, next year, we told them that we will be doing a new register. So that was made very clear at the meeting. And when we mentioned that nobody raised any contrary view, whether they were against or even they were supportive, there was nothing like that. So at the meeting, we came to the conclusion that this was something the partners were very much, pretty much excited about. And the thing is that it's not something we are even doing it in 2019, it's 2020. So certainly this is a discussion that will come up severally. Something which will not happen this year is 2020.
The chairperson, in her explanation, said that it was going to cost a lot of money to do an extensive registration, and that they intended to compile a new voters register for the 2020 elections with biometric features and facial recognition technology. Nobody, either from MPP, NDC, CPP, or any of the other parties, made any comment, because that was not the issue on the table for discussions. And so we continued and had our deliberations. So we find it very strange that the EC will come out with a statement and claim that all the parties agreed that there will be compilation of a new group.
What steps does the party intend to take in this regard?
So we are writing to the EC, we are issuing a statement to the public stating our position that let's register. We are in principle not against compilation of a new voters register. We believe that such a matter is a major issue that has serious ramifications for the credibility of the entire electoral process, and therefore has to be tabled properly.
Right, so you heard Dr. Bosman Asare. You may have heard him elsewhere speaking about this matter and insisting that in any case, if the Electoral Commission decided to bring in the parties, it was just a favor, and that they are not under any obligation to consult them, because that is the job they are appointed to do at the Electoral Commission. In fact, if you read the Constitution, he may be right, but is that how to go? Right. So, and we'll be saying a very special birthday to the President, 75th birthday to the President, but I reserve that when we get to RTI. Now, let me begin with Mr. Serin Ketia. So, what exactly is the problem with what the EC has done? Is the problem simply because they issued a statement after the IPAC meeting and said, after extensive deliberations, this is what has been reached, or that there shouldn't be a new register?
Thank you very much, and let me say happy birthday to His Excellency the President. The problem is that if you want to involve me in a discussion, you better involve me. If you don't want to involve me in a decision making, take your decision and hold yourself responsible for that decision. That's the problem. But we've seen that over this couple of months that the new reconstituted Electoral Commission started working. They always wish to take decisions, and then instead of claiming responsibility, they want to shift the responsibility on other stakeholders. And that is the major beef we have. You remember that their very first meeting after the reconstitution was titled Emergency IPAC Meeting. We had challenges with that. And then I don't know how they extended the invitation to the other parties, but we had 46 minutes to prepare and attend such an important meeting. On the agenda of the meeting on that occasion was the limited registration exercise. That has to do with the voters register. We raised issues about it. Electoral Commission came to apologize for so doing. And we said that, well, the procedure of meetings generally is that if I'm entitled to be invited and I'm denied the opportunity, then whatever you decide there can be invalidated. So we think that if they want us on board, they should quickly call another meeting and let us go to discuss the issues. Particularly, we realized that the approach they were going to use to undertake the limited registration was going to be problematic. So we met them exclusively and told them that you are new guys around. These things, we've done it over and over again. The way you are going to approach this limited registration is going to give us problems, because we have offline equipment that we use to do this registration exercises. This online equipment was acquired solely for the purpose of undertaking continuous registration. It is not meant for mass registration. So, and that is to say that in between mass registration exercises, anybody who walks into any of the district offices of Electoral Commission and demands to be registered, and he's able to justify that he's entitled to be registered, has to be registered according to our laws. So let us get this equipment so we can use that one to be doing the continuous registration. And we separately sat and fashioned the regulations that will govern that type of continuous registration. It was not intended for this mass registration. So anytime we began in 10-year intervals, we replace the register completely.
Right.
And in between the 10-year intervals, we do limited registration almost annually.
Right.
So we are going to go into a referendum, and for which reason there is need for us to update the register. And so we ought to extend the registration to electoral area level, as has been the practice over the years. So if you limit this thing to district offices of the commission, we are going to have serious challenges, because those were the days when it was in the peak of the rainy season. The areas to be affected are very underdeveloped, with very bad roads and so on. Some communities are normally even cut off during the rainy season and so on. We gave all type of reasons. And then we had erratic electricity, and without electricity, the equipment cannot work and all that. We gave those warnings, they never heeded. We went into that exercise, and we were projecting to cover 100,000 potential registrants. We ended up with 48,000. That is 48% of the people we expected to register. And yet, in the subsequent IPAC, Electoral Commission claimed victory and was all over the place saying the exercise was successful. We raised that matter very strongly. And so in a subsequent meeting, we decided that we cannot go with this online registration when we are going to cover the whole country.
Okay.
And so they then agreed in principle that, well, if that is the case, we should postpone the second phase of the limited registration, so that when we enter 2019, they would have prepared sufficiently for us to go and then undertake this limited registration, which would extend to electoral area levels before the district assembly elections. Now here we are. You called this meeting for the purpose of planning for the district assembly elections, and that will involve updating of the register throughout the country and so on. You go back and you are still at the same position of wanting to implement what you tried as a pilot and failed. And so our representatives were, and including the MPP representatives, were saying that, look, we are going to go into district level elections. These things happen at electoral areas. So if we are going to update the register for the purpose of conducting district level elections, then for heaven's sake, it must happen at the electoral area levels, so that people would have the opportunity of having their names on the register and then be able to participate meaningfully in the district level elections. But if you require people to move, if you take a district like Bole-Bamboi district, you have to travel about 80 kilometers from Bamboi to Bole town. So if you are saying everybody in the Bamboi area must move to Bole and queue at the district offices of the Electoral Commission to be able to register, then it's like an intention to disenfranchise people. You tried it, it didn't work. Why are you not doing something differently? Meanwhile, we have this offline equipment there in sufficient numbers to even extend the registration to a polling station level. So why are you not deploying the equipment to extend the registration to electoral area level? So we had serious difficulties about that.
Okay.
So it was in an attempt to offer explanations that the EC then said that, they had planned to replace the whole register in 2020. So it will be waste of resources to be able to then go in to extend this exercise to the electoral area level.
Okay.
And so that was it. It wasn't as if the issue of the replacement or otherwise of the voters register was on the agenda for discussion.
Right.
It wasn't tabled at all. It was mentioned in reference to an answer to a question. So you cannot then come out and issue a communique covering decisions that have been taken, and then you refer to that as a decision, a matter that has been exhaustively discussed and conclusions arrived at. So we thought that if they wanted to introduce the subject of whether there should be a new voters register, they are free to do it, and the public will come on board. We all canvass our points and see where it takes us.
Let me see if I can get you quickly on this, and then I can have my other guests come in. Other persons who attended this IPAC meeting have agreed and confirmed the NDC's position.
Yes.
That this was not on the agenda.
Yeah.
And that it is wrong for the Electoral Commission to issue a statement purporting that this was an outcome of an exhaustive deliberation.
Yeah.
The EC doesn't seem to clearly deny that.
Yeah.
So the question really is, let's agree that they may have made an omission in that respect. Should there be a new voters register for 2020?
Well, it is a subject that is open for discussion. In my view, there is no such need. Because first of all, why do we require a new register? Our practice in the country has been that we replace the register completely every decade, particularly after a population census. The reason being that the register is like a living document. People get on board, and then people get their names there, but others will grow and are entitled to be registered, and there are people whose names are there and they keep dying by the minute. So it was calculated that every year the number of ghost names that are generated because of these deaths and other things, and the Ghanaian attitude of not wanting to pinpoint names of dead people to be deleted. So you see that every year there is some accumulation of ghost names on the register. So it was determined that by 10 years, the number of accumulated ghost names would have been significant.
Okay.
So if we do a population census, and after that population census, you know, there are movement in the age brackets and so on, then there is a need for us to compile a new register. You can never have a register without ghost names.
Okay.
Because people can write names, you can write your name today, and then on your way home you die.
Right.
Your name remains on the register.
Right.
So, but we are concerned about the aggregation and the impact on the credibility of the whole register. So it was from these calculations that 10-year interval was done.
There's also the rule for continuous
registration. Continuous registration.
But question is, when was the last time we replaced the register?
We replaced the register in 2012.
Right.
And in fact, before the 2012 registration, the reason why the nation acquired this biometric equipment was that we wanted an upgraded technology so that if it is possible, we add continuous registration, and even the need to be replacing the register wholly may not even exist.
Okay.
But then, we are not there yet. In my view, we are not there yet.
Right,
so we will be better off with our 10-year rule and then the intermittent upgrade.
All right. Just hold on briefly for me. Now, Kuku, how do you understand what it is that is playing out from this IPAC meeting held in the week and the question of the need or no need for a new voters roll?
See, and it's good. You went through a process with General by segmenting, and that made sense to me. If we're taking the press release that was issued post the IPAC meeting and all the noise and counter noise that we've had, in my candid opinion, it's a storm in a teacup. Complete. Everybody, as we go along, the mischief is being cured, if there is one, that perhaps there's a problem with the drafting, the crafting of this statement. One or two elements that were discussed in passing have found their way here. Unfortunately for the EC, because of the impression that it was extensively discussed and adopted. So it becomes problematic there.
The question actually is that it was not discussed. It was only mentioned, or an answer to a question.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what I meant. Mentioning is not synonymous with discussing extensively. Okay. I agree.
So proceed.
But it was, I have the minutes here. Yeah. I've been able to access the minutes. I have
it looks like you have rewritten the minutes.
No, I've had a habit of assessing. Yes, fantastic point. Yes. I was going to say that. But I have the minutes here, and I have a history of assessing IPAC minutes. And I have some here from 1994 to today. And one thing I've seen is that subsequent meetings, they do review or correction of minutes. And you'll be surprised. When we come to IPAC, the legal status or whatever we are talking about, I'll deal with it extensively there. But you have a situation where the next meeting, in correcting minutes, sometimes it becomes problematic, even among themselves, who were all at the meeting. Differences as to what really was said or done in the previous meeting. It happens all the time. It's a very peculiar, very weird thing, because these are adults who are representing political parties that are very major stakeholders, and they go into a conclave or a meeting, and yet they are unable to arrive at what indeed was said at the meeting or agreed on. Consistent, and I'll prove it today if I'm given the opportunity. But let's not digress. The point I'm making is that there is no, after listening to all sides, it is obvious that there was a problem with this draft, the drafting of this press release, in terms of especially the paragraph 2, the 3. The commission will compile a new register ahead of 2020 presidential and parliamentary elections. Obviously, wasn't extensively agreed, discussed, and adopted. But if you read the minutes, one Mr. Mecca also asked the question, the EC responded and said that yes, we intend doing that. Everybody heard it, and nobody disputed or
nobody commented
on that matter. So for me, and we've just heard, is it the deputy chairperson, right, saying that they intend to do it 2020. When I heard that, I thought that's why I said it's a storm in a teacup, because obviously there will be further consultations within the context of IPAC, knowing what IPAC has come to represent. Even though legally, as we come there, you yourself alluded to it, the EC has the mandate, but good governance, good sense has brought about a situation where the IPAC and the EC have been collaborating seriously and have done a lot of reforms in election architecture. So it makes sense for them to continue the collaboration. There was no way I was going to imagine a new register roadmap being put out without IPAC going back to the table to discuss what is here. They have the means. Contact each other, the next IPAC meeting, or is put that rather than the noises in the public space, which tend to undermine the respect they have for each other, which tend to create some crisis of confidence also in the public domain. And indeed, in so doing, because in dealing with this issue, you see attacks and attacks also on the personnel of the EC. It pollutes the atmosphere. They have a history of collaboration and cooperation, and it's done a lot of good to this country. So my view is that when these things happen, well, okay, you can issue one public statement, you can clarify, but the continuous agitation and attacks on that body and its personnel really doesn't help anybody. You'll be going back the next time to sit with them and to again collaborate. They should continue building on that spirit of collaboration and cooperation.
Okay, very quickly.
Now,
were the parties or the NDC justified in raising the concern about this press release from the EC?
Yes.
Good.
Perhaps you are not getting my drift.
If they were, the EC, do you think that genuinely it ought to be saying we're sorry?
See, let me deal with first one. The NDC were right, justified in raising it, because I've heard other parties vindicating their position. But I think they started from the right premise and drew a wrong conclusion. They read into it an attempt by somebody to play mischief with the electoral system, and actually read all sorts of meaning. That is why I disagree with them. And that's why I'm saying they have enough opportunity and room. And there are many examples in the IPAC EC history where they've disagreed on many things. Look, there was one classic example before election 2016 about a certain National Election Security Committee, if you recall, that was supposed to have been set up and announced. And you remember the chaos. I have the minutes here. When they went back to do a review of the corrections, all sorts of things happening, all of them taking different positions. Oh, okay, it shouldn't have been announced. I'm saying from 1994, I have the minutes of IPAC here. There was a time the NDC even boycotted IPAC. Mr. Sidun Ketia may confirm this.
That's true.
Yes, and you see, but they go back and they help each other. They listen to each other and they work out modalities, and you will be surprised the things they have done in terms of positivity to our electoral system. Fantastic work. I am suggesting that these things will keep happening. And in the minutes, he said that, oh, there's always tension, but they resolve it. Their own words. So there was no need. You draw the attention of the public to that error on the part on the part of the EC, which is admitted without debate. You are right. The EC also in response, and we'll be coming there. That's where the IPAC factor comes in terms of the deputy chairman's responses and the body language, as well as the choice of words and things. We'll come there. Nobody is going to sit here and purge the EC entirely of any fault. I'm not going to do that. Okay? But I'm saying that if you proceed from the premise that this is an error and read into it an election rigging motive, I think that's unfair.
Okay.
And I think that doesn't help to actually build the kind of tradition of collaboration and cooperation that they have exhibited from 1994, 93, 94 to today. And if you do a balance sheet, the kind of positive contributions that the IPAC through the EC have made to our election architecture, you'll be surprised. It's huge. So please, my appeal to the NDC, and for that matter, any other political party, is that if you recognize an error, an omission, or a commission of some transgression on the part of the election management body, I'm not suggesting that don't publicly say it, but don't read into it a multitude of suspicions which do not constitute proof of the complicity or the conspiracy you are talking about.
Thank you. So we will return to deal with the substantive matter of whether or not there ought to be a new electoral roll, and if there ought to be one, how do we seek to achieve same? Now, Clara, from what you have heard from, Mr. Sidun Ketia and Kwekubako, would you say that the decision of the parties that attended the IPAC, the decision of one or two to take the alleged omission as a serious and significant matter should be described in the terms that Kwekubako does, a storm in the teacup?
With respect to pointing out if what you believe didn't happen, of course, that is even why when you have minutes of meetings, they are read at the next meeting so that everybody gets an opportunity to see whether they are accurate or not. So accuracy is important. So to the extent that some parties feel that what was communicated is not what was reflected and it's inaccurate, I think they are totally within their rights to point out the inaccuracy. I think there's no problem with that.
Is it a serious, an accuracy of a serious nature? And does it deserve the attention it has attracted?
No, when it comes to, I always say that I respect what is in the domain of other people as to what I would do, but I always respect what other people have their rights. If something is inaccurate, I think a person who feels it is inaccurate has every right to point it out. Whether or not it's serious is how they deem it. It's whether or not they see it as serious. And if they see it as serious enough and point it out, I think they are within their rights. Now, whether or not we think it is serious enough or not, we also are entitled to our opinion. But for the key question of whether or not they should point it out, I think they are entitled to. There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, go ahead.
The problem that I see is similar to what Uncle Kweku said, which is about, when I saw this, what came to my mind again was, there we go again, the politics of the register. Since 1992, I think every time, we've always had the politics of the EC register. And the politics has been consistent. It's just the parties that have been changing rules. So at every time you would have, depending on which party is in government, they are supporting the EC, defending the EC, let's do this. And the other person is shouting, let's not do this. So what we are having now for me is consistent with what has been happening over the years. What has changed is the roles, the people playing what role. That is what has changed. That is where when we come, I think we have to revisit the voter register. I don't think at this stage of our democracy, we should still be having these issues. Whether or not we should have a voter register and how we have a voter register at this age of our democracy, it's not something that should raise the issues that are coming to light. By now, we should have sorted it out. So when we come to that, I want to say that we actually need to go back because it's not a very complicated matter. Why we want a voters register is to make sure that the right to vote is exercised. So everybody, the key principle of a voters register is that everybody who is entitled to vote gets on the register. And that is one. Two, that people who are not entitled to vote do not get on the register. And the three, that the register is accurate. That's what should concern us. So I think when we are having a discussion, actually our discussion should be, how do we create a voters register that takes care of this? And nationally, we should be able to rally around and find a solution instead of every now and then having what I call the politics of the register. For me, it's at this stage of our democracy, it's not a complicated matter. And I don't agree with General Mosquito when he says that we are not there yet. I think we are. We just have to make a determination whether we want it. And if we want it, I believe that there are ways that we can solve this problem once and for all.
Okay, so we'll get to that question. Now, Kofi, poorly managed elections, beginning with a register, have led to very, very terrible consequences, including nearby in Togo. We talk about Zimbabwe, Kenya. Remember the thousands in Kenya. We talk about Benin, Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire. So, are they justified to not only point out the wrong or what they see to be an error and elevate it to a very serious issue? And as Kwekubako said, they added suspicions. Are they justified in all of that?
So if you look on the surface, you will get it wrong. Because if you say they are justified, then you would be agreeing with Kweku, and I agree with him, that they are reading into a situation an attempt to play mischief with the register for obvious purposes, if you say they are justified. If you say they are not justified, then you will say, well, we went for a meeting, these things didn't happen, and then somebody says it happened. Meanwhile, we need to know this, and I agree with everything that has been said, especially what Clara just said, that where we are today as a country and the state of technology and everything, we shouldn't have this problem. But these two parties have both been in this situation. And there is a lot of mutual suspicion between them because they know what is possible with tinkering with these things. Now, it is not the simple issue of that meeting and what was missed or what was smuggled in. It is that sense that if anybody starts playing with these things, they can do so much damage. So what we are seeing is mutual suspicion rising to the top and converting a storm in a teacup to a hurricane. So in a sense, they are justified, in a sense, they are not justified. But the rest of us who play below this level, following from what Clara said, the first thing I wrote on this issue is this. If it is serious, treat it as if it is. And I say this because, look, we underestimate. You see what you just said? Poorly managed elections and what they can bring. Because we've been saved these things for so long. But you'll be amazed how simple the solution can be. And it will go down into RTI, but let me deal with it on this one alone. Look, you have an IPAC meeting. Simply follow the process for meetings. It is so simple, it's amazing we can do this at the level of IPAC. And by the way, let's not get it wrong. IPAC is an informal body, but it is the most important electoral institution we have in this country. I repeat, IPAC is an informal body, but it is the most important electoral reform institution we have in this country. And you'll be amazed that institutions that are formed through convention, not necessarily through legislation, tend to be more powerful because of the moral suasion they have. That's why Britain doesn't have a constitution. They've agreed so many things, and IPAC is that important. In other words, if we mess with IPAC, this country can end up in war. That being said, what is the process for a meeting? One, there must be notices for the meeting. Simple as that. Please come for a meeting, respectfully, 2 weeks' time. Two, there must be an agenda for the meeting. It's as simple as that.
We'll deal with that.
Yes, but I'm saying these things come up because
somewhere,
yeah.
other business
So I'm
is
saying,
one of the last items.
So I'm coming because
46 minutes to attend.
Yeah, no, and they apologized for all that.
But that's where I'm going.
That this subject matter cannot come under any other business.
Yes, it cannot come under any other business.
There is the back door.
Right, I get it. I get it.
That is the point I am making. The point I'm making is that you see, the meeting process is simple. Send a notice, the agenda should be clear there. And when you get into the meeting, strictly abide by process. Because if it is serious, treat it as if it is. And process is simple. Process is follow the agenda strictly. And a matter which is serious should not be in any other matters. Yeah. It is simple. When you follow the agenda, take minutes. It's that simple.
Are you saying Koku has read the minutes and he tells us that a specific individual posed the question which elicited this answer about this new electoral rule? Are you saying the EC chair or whoever chaired the meeting, and in this case was a chairperson, you are saying that she should have told him that I'm sorry, we can't answer this question because it is not part of the agenda or that it cannot constitute an AOB?
So yes, in a sense.
Let me read the minutes. Of course, subject to correction.
Let him read it.
Yes, it's normal.
Yeah, subject to corrections. Yeah.
The compilation of the new voters register. In response to a question from Mr. Mecca, whether the Commission has any intention of compiling a new voters register before the 2020 elections, the chairperson answered in the affirmative. She explained further that in view of the tremendous changes in technology in elections, it is the considered view of the Commission to compile a new register which will include not only fingerprints identification, but also the facial recognition of the voters as well. Moreover, because of the obvious huge financial outlay associated with the technology for compilation of a new register, it is financially prudent to undertake the limited registration with the existing equipment at the district offices. This is because the present technology, which is capable of only fingerprint identification, is becoming obsolete and would have to be discarded. Hence, the chairperson appealed to the parties to lend their support to the project of compiling a new voters register, none of the participants raised any objection to the decision.
Thank you.
This is
You are
subject
saying-
to review.
Yes, you are saying that what should have been her response to the question?
One, if it is a major issue, you treat it as if it is. So if this question was asked, you answer it simply in passing and you situate it in the proper place in the minutes, if it's not a major agenda issue. Number two, if you answer it this extensively and you make suggestions to the effect that it's going towards the level of a decision, you are breaching simple procedure. Because you don't elevate a footnote to a key issue and you don't reduce a key issue to a footnote. This is what it causes.
Do you note that she made an appeal to the parties to support the process?
Yes, I note that.
Does that suggest to you that she or the EC is thinking about consulting and having them on board on the
That
issue?
suggests to me exactly my problem, that you treat serious things as if they are serious. You don't make an appeal in passing on a separate issue when the issue is not even on the agenda. Okay, so without due respect to Madam Jean, I think this is a big enough issue that it shouldn't have been discussed this flippantly. And these are the problems that are caused when these things happen. So my point is, please, it's big. I think the EC should respectfully just withdraw any communication on this matter and then make it a single agenda for the next meeting before they go forward. So an apology is in place. Fine. You know, there's unfortunate part of this is the accusations of mendacity. The accusations from, you know, especially the NDC, that somebody is trying to play the mischief. And I'm saying it comes from their history, what they know is possible. Look, I remember going into the last EC's forum on registers. And I remember taking a position against the present government that we didn't need a new register. It was a big issue. Let my vote come. People lost their eyes on it. And I know what I suffered for that. All right? At the end of the day, I kept saying that the important thing is to make sure that the pink sheets, you receive them, etc. My point is, it's important, but it may not be the most important thing. If we get through a number of the reforms that we need to get to, which usually come through IPAC, we'll solve the problems. But
should the NDC or any other party attending the IPAC who had concerns about this waited for the next meeting, because there'll be a meeting in April?
Absolutely.
We are told latest sometime by 17th of April or so, there'll be a meeting. Should they have waited, go there and have the issue corrected? Or ahead of that, simply write to the Electoral Commission, pointing the error to them, out to them, and requiring them to either withdraw the press release circulated or amend same?
They should absolutely have not waited, because you have a situation where public statements have been made with an emphatic, you know, with emphatic sentences. And if you let that ride, it is acquiescence, it's laches. You have slept on your rights and they can proceed from there.
No, is it not best that they write to the EC and point out the error and require of them to come back a second time? And then if they decline and perhaps the meeting does not afford them their opportunity, then they make it public.
No, General Mosquito knows more politics than I do. You and I know that even when somebody says something against you, the forum they say it is where you respond for effective, you know, addressing of the issue. So what the NDC have done is to basically say, hey, no. Now they can write, now they can call for a meeting. What we are all hearing is that it is not exactly what happened. What Kweku is telling us is that, look, generally speaking, these ebbs and flows happen. You know, a little mistake here, a little this, they resolve it, and then we get very good outcomes. What I am saying is that we should stop agreeing that these avoidable slips are acceptable and we cannot do anything about them.
Okay.
And we should see IPAC as a crucial place. Now, my point on the process is that General and the politicians, when you go for your meetings and the issue is not an agenda or whatever, please stick to the process. And for the sake of RTI, correct the minutes, sign them, archive them, because me and Samson will be writing for some of those minutes later in life, if for nothing at all, for our history and to catalog how our democracy has evolved. And if we take these simple things seriously, we'll avoid some of these problems.
Thank you, Kofi. Now, Kweku, can you confirm to us what Elvis Efree Ankra, who is in the man for the NDC on elections attending the IPAC, has said? That even after the meetings, before a statement is issued, they ought to make input to the statement. And that sometimes there have been disagreements as to the particular phrasing or language used in the statement. Is that what it ought to be for an IPAC meeting, or this EC should not be allowed to be bogged down by the parties in this IPAC process?
See, I have seen, in fact, I have to be very honest, I'm aware that in view of some of the controversies and differences they've had as to what really had happened, there was a time they agreed that, look here, let's all have an input. You draft it, of course, as the commission, but then before we leave, let's all go through it and see that this is true reflection of the proceedings of the meeting. I'm aware of that. I cannot sit here and deny that. That would be a mark of dishonesty.
So do you find a basis for the suspicion you say they raise, when that in this matter was not done?
No, you still didn't get my drift. I said they were not wrong in raising the issue, even in the public space. My difficulty was with them reading into it a certain mischief and complicity.
Yes, so that is my question. I clearly understand you. My question is that, do you now understand the basis of their suspicion and raising issues that you call mischief?
There's nothing like suspicion, in my candid opinion. That ought not to have arisen.
Okay.
They could have disagreement with how this has been crafted. That's fair. And you could even articulate it publicly. Beyond that, you don't go talking of conspiracy theories, which poison the atmosphere and actually undermine the collaborative tradition that you've had all these years. Because I'm saying they're under balance. Look, they've done a great job, the EC, within the framework of the IPAC. And I am a supporter of that.
Right.
So I love to have it going in a sustainable way.
All right.
To be honest with you, that is the position I have. But you see, if you read, and so the discussion, the public discourse, is all dominated by conspiracy theories and complicity elements. It can poison that atmosphere. And even when you go to the meeting, everybody is suspicious of each other. How are they going to be able to succeed? Look, Mr. Sedun Ketia referred to a last-minute invitation that was brought to them some few minutes.
46 minutes to the meeting.
The commission wrote to them
to apologize. He mentioned that too.
Yes. So that's not, why then do you keep recycling it? Because in the public defense, in their defense of this matter, they have recollected all those incidents. It isn't as if during our giant's time there were no such incidents across the divide. Look, what political parties have done to the EC before then the INEC, that was even understandable and reasonable in view of the characteristics of our transition process. Post INEC, Afro-Giants EC also had a hell of a time from the opposition parties, including I was part of those attacking them. Subsequently, when we started changing the election architecture with transparent ballot boxes, photo ID cards, and all those things, you see, that suspicion element was also dying progressively. Not that there were no challenges, but improving on the election architecture and infrastructure actually helped to bring down the mistrust.
You raised an issue. We should address the problem where it is. It is totally unacceptable that this should happen, even with an apology. And the point must be made that it is the EC that therefore starts the problem. You solve the problem where it is. Now, I would suggest.
But it's too long. Except that you see.
I would suggest that we tell the EC never to do that again.
Past, this point.
No, but the EC apologizing is an admission of an error.
Yes.
And apologizing.
But you are saying it's been happening for years. Should this continue?
We have
I mean different problems.
Yes, yes.
All right, so let's do it this way. Let's do it this way. Let's hear Sedun Ketia briefly, and then when we are done, because you raised the question that we may not have to, as it were, ignore, about the posture or the posturing of not only the NDC but also the Electoral Commission represented by Bosman Asari. Let's deal with that very briefly and then go into the main question of register or no register, and if a register, how do we get it? So quickly, very briefly, what's your reaction?
Thank you very much. I've listened to my colleague panelists, and I'm happy to know that they are not politicians we are. So, so you see, when the essence of an apology is that, yes, I understand something went wrong, so let us correct it. But you don't accept that something is wrong. You render a public apology. Let us take corrective action. You say, no, we've gone beyond that.
Okay.
You understand?
No,
so that was what happened in the case of the first meeting. You understand? They had taken decisions on the revision of the register, that is the limited registration. Okay. So when they apologized, we went and engaged them exclusively, NDC and
so we can move away from that.
So and they insisted that no, decisions have already been taken. So if we are beginning to see a pattern where something is done, you draw their attention, they apologize, but they continue to say that but that decision has been taken, so let's move ahead. Then that is the source of the suspicion. Okay. And then also I acknowledge the fact that IPAC has contributed significantly to the building up of this elections architecture. And that is the tradition we want to follow. So if we see a departure from these traditions, it must be a cause of worry, and that is the basis of our complaints. The posturing of the reconstituted commission is not helpful, because you listen to them and then they come out saying, we can do this, we have the law to do it. If you have the law to do it, why consult me? Go ahead and do it. And then, in this particular case, we are talking about several elections. There is a referendum coming up about whether DCs should be appointed or elected. There is local government elections, election of, district assembly men and women.
Yes, in fact, the agenda for the day was, let me just read all of it. First, opening prayer, then opening remarks by the chairperson, and then there was consideration of minutes. Number 4, adoption of minutes. Number 5, 2019 district level elections and referendum. Yes. And then number 6, inspection of offices of political parties. Yes. Number 7, Citizen Ghana Movement, Kofi Bentel's matter, compliance with audit requirements, updates. And then 8, AOB. 9, closing remarks by Chairperson Electoral Commission, or is it Dr. Bosmasai, and then closing prayer number 10.
So on this occasion, participants and the political parties were insisting on an updated register that is credible enough to allow assemblies and unit committee members to be elected, and to allow full participation in the election, in the referendum, to decide whether MMDCs should be elected or appointed. So, and then you come and tell us that, well, we are doing this thing so that we are aware that it will not result in a credible enough register, but because in future we will be replacing the register, we don't want to spend money to ensure that those who are entitled to vote all those who are entitled to vote during the district level elections actually are covered. But then the important election for you is the presidential elections, and you hope to spend more money on that. You have the equipment, the offline equipment, which can be deployed now to the various.
I'm sure you bring that in levels. When we come to the question of the electoral roll itself, that you seem to suggest there's no need for a new one, compiling a new one. Now, quickly, because I want us to move away from this, go to the major issue, look for the solutions. But the question of the conduct, that suggested that they are independent, and in fact, they do not need to consult.
Oh, you see, if you are talking strict law relative to the mandate given to the EC, which is constitutionally stipulated or enshrined, yes, aren't we told in the Constitution that the EC is not subject to the direction and control of any person and authority? So if you are talking strict law, anybody who says that the EC, not anything from the Electoral Reform Committee or IPAC is not binding, it's not legally wrong, strictly speaking. But it is our own experiences since 1992 elections and the totality of the contributions of all political parties across the divide, including civil society, that led to the formation of the IPAC. Indeed, at the very first meeting of IPAC, this is somewhere 1993, first meeting, this is Afarijan. He says, he made a point, he said the first meeting with the Electoral Commission was an introductory one. These are minutes, I'm reading the minutes. It stressed on the meeting's role as an advisory body to the Electoral Commission and a forum for regular consultation with the political parties in matters relating to the nation's electoral processes.
That's why it is called Inter-Party Advisory Committee.
And in recent times, and Mr. Seydou Nketia was a prominent member of this process, the Electoral Commission Reform Committee. You were prominent, I've seen all your signatures around. Yes. And the issue of, it came up, they were talking of the institutionalization of IPAC. This is what the minute says. According to Dr. Farijan, there is the need for further discussion on the real meaning of institutionalization. He cautioned the parties to take note of the constitutional provision that stipulates that the Commission is not subject to the direction or control of any person or body. He cautioned that we should be careful so that institutionalization of IPAC does not conflict with the major provisions which make the EC independent.
Article 46.
The Deputy Chairman in charge of Finance and Administration, Ms. Georgina Opoku-Amankwa, further explained that the legislative IPAC may become a fetter on the independence of the Commission. She, however, stated that the Reforms Committee agreed that there will be regular IPAC meetings at least once every month to discuss issues of importance and get the necessary feedback after the Commission has met. There's another important one I think I should read. You see?
And some of the parties at certain times have suggested and advocated the legislation of IPAC.
Exactly.
Particularly the NPP.
Exactly. In fact, if the Reform Committee, the Electoral Reform Committee, that was their proposal and recommendation. And that's why Afarijan, so they had all met. This was when 12 June 2015.
Right.
The minutes I'm reading.
Okay.
They had all met.
We're supposed to be brief on this matter so that we can move on to whether there is need for a register or not.
Closing remarks. That's Afarijan. It says, in his closing remarks, the chairman thanked IPAC for its support and cooperation over the years. He appealed to the parties to have at least one permanent representative on IPAC to ensure consistency and institutional memory. He remarked that there had sometimes been tension at IPAC meetings due to the individual advantages that people expected. But dialogue was always important as it brought about the best for all. He said IPAC will become stronger in the future because of the greater involvement and transparency it brings to the electoral process. Okay. It is on this basis that I am saying, and I'm appealing to the deputy chairperson of this commission, to perhaps watch his body language, watch his mode of communication, watch his choice of words, where and how he goes about it. You see, the law is on his side when he talks of something not being binding on the commission related to his exercise of his mandate. But if we go through the history and what we have done to our election architecture, without IPAC, without the cooperation of the political parties, without civil society's involvement, I'm not sure this country will be where it is today. You have said a while ago here that this was noise that was being made. If Bosman Asare, who is a deputy commissioner, uses the same words, it's noise that the NDC is up to. So he's liable to critique. No, he's liable to critique. Not that it hasn't happened before. Look, there were times Afarijan was tough and hard. 2006, especially the NDC were complaining about bloated Ashanti regional register.
So why are you asking him to be cautious and careful? What is it?
There's a way to talk about it. Look, if you knew they were going to come back to IPAC meeting, clearly there was a problem with the drafting here. If I were him, I would not go about on air talking about my mandate being that, iron rock in the Constitution. I wouldn't do it that way. I would wait for them to come to an IPAC meeting and deal with it well. Look, Charlotte, who's somebody I supported and still support.
Right.
I think has been unfair, even though I believe I wasn't convinced by the Supreme Court verdict. I accept it.
They didn't give a decision, so we don't have a decision.
It's you are the better man. Me layman like me. I thought they did.
They didn't give a decision.
Because I sat down, I heard something, and they said we had no case. If they said we had no case, it means they gave a verdict. Okay? She too, she had some challenges. Don't forget, when she came into office, she was talking about we like it, we love the logo. I was opposed to the logo change. There were a lot of people who thought that was a mark of arrogance.
Right.
Afarijan had similar problems. I'm telling you. So but Afarijan learned how to handle it eventually.
Okay.
Okay, so I think that's the process I'm talking about. The EC has a higher responsibility, of course, not to engage in public running battles with the parties.
Okay, thank
but
you.
The parties must bury the suspicions.
Right. Now, Clara, because you're a lawyer, let me just, the Constitution says that, in Article 46, that the Electoral Commission is not subject to the direction or control of any person or authority. Those are the words of the Constitution. So if an EC deputy chairperson simply reiterates this, what's the problem?
Well, from what Kweku said, the issue is not having uttered the words. I think it's the context in which the words were uttered. And I think it's in the situation that has happened. There's nothing wrong with the words. It's a constitutional provision. That's what the Constitution says. But in the context of the discussion, does that really come to play? Because the truth is, yes, it's a constitutional provision. You're not subject to the direction and control. But we also know that apart from the hard law that governs your setup, we have the values that govern the setup. And the values that govern that law includes the IPAC discussions, the consultation, because the nature of your work, definitely political parties are stakeholders and not just political parties. In fact, you are bound by the same Constitution under Article 1(2) to always act in the welfare of the people. So your independence is measured against the welfare of the people, because that is the guiding principle at the end of the day. The Constitution doesn't say do not consult. It doesn't say that. So to the extent that you engage in certain consultation processes that impact very well, because if we are going to safeguard the democracy of our country, we need the buy-in of the people. We need the people to uphold the legitimacy of all the institutions, and we do need the stakeholders, in this case being the political parties. So in short, it is not about the words. I guess the issue is about the context in which this was said. Okay,
and please be as brief as Clara has been.
Yes.
About posture, conduct, and independence. And don't let us all forget, when Indum went to court in the Supreme Court, the court gave a judgment, and people celebrated when it sought to have, slighted Charlotte Osei a bit when she was insisting on independence, on control. And the court said, you have some independence, but watch it. Yes. You need these people. Right.
So that's the effect of posturing. You flip the emotions against you. That's one. Note, the independence of the EC is extremely dear and fundamental to this democracy. I remember in 1992, all those things, that one and the transitional provisions. And the reason was because we wanted to make sure nobody, especially Mr. could affect them. So it's something that's dear to everybody, everybody. So we won't touch that. But that independence is not absolute. I remember the arguments 2007, 2008 about auditing them. That independence is also subject to the law. That is why we went to court, and that's what you find on the agenda. Now, then comes the posturing. It is counterproductive for them to think that that independence gives them the, I want to use the word right, but I don't know, but to suggest that bodies like IPAC are dispensable. That's what I want to nail. Bodies like IPAC are indispensable. Dialogue with political parties is indispensable.
But bodies like IPAC should not be directing the Electoral Commission.
They cannot, which is why I talked about the independence, that they absolutely cannot. In fact, there are spaces in democracies for bodies like IPAC which should never be legislated. Because if you legislate IPAC, you put them in conflict with the Constitution. Yeah. However, you must appreciate that they have extreme importance, which is why I'm saying, if you look at the law only, you have the posture to think we can do it without you. You can't. So the thing we need to nail here is that bodies like IPAC are indispensable, and the EC must not suggest that they can be dispensed of. Dialogue with political parties is indispensable. The EC cannot suggest that they can be dispensed with. Again, let's remember, that is why in the UK, most of the things they do, and they've done over centuries, are done through conventions. All of them agree that this is what is right. They don't put it in the law because the law can be too rigid. So it is not right for them to have that posture.
Thank you. We'll be right back.